Good morning, members of the board. My name is Ken Kasman. I'm the Reporting and Accountability Department Director. We wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about the development that's allowed under the regional plan and what's currently remaining in those balances, as well as some of the current development patterns and trends that we're seeing with that data in order to set some of the context for the planning discussions that you'll have throughout the day today and tomorrow, and as well to help inform some of the policy choices that are coming up in the Cultivating Communities program. So really wanted to provide just this context. And on the next slide, please. As we do with so many of these, we're going to set context to the presentation itself as well and remind that when we think about development in the Tahoe region, development was spiraling out of control as we saw the lead up to the 1960s Olympics. And even afterward, you see here on the slide, development was trending from 300, 500 parcels developed a year to over 1,000 in the 1960s in the lead up to the Olympics. And then with the attention and the national desire to come to Tahoe after the Olympics, it continued into the 1970s with over 1,600 parcels a year developed in the region. And that led to, obviously, the creation and the formation of the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and the Bi-State Compact. Next slide, please. And what we saw is through the regional plan and the creation of the agency, that growth was still continuing. And so the 1980 compact then amended the compact and installed the idea of thresholds. And if we click on the next slide, what we see is that subsequently, the 1987 regional plan established the growth control system that really did lock down the development rates. And you see here, it was a novel system that both addressed the unique situation that the vast majority of the parcels in the region were already developed when we were establishing this regional plan, that then set out how the remaining development was going to be allocated and built, but also acknowledged this existence of a vast array of development that was already on the ground when the regional plan was adopted. And just to set that in context, and we see it here, there were roughly about 42,000 existing residential units at the time that the plan was adopted. And the growth cap really established at that time about a 20% headroom of about 7,500 units that would be developed over the lifespan of that 1987 regional plan. So it was really about how you meter out that remaining development or the additional headroom. But if we look at our existing development today, the average house, the average residential unit in the region was built in 1975, over 50 years ago. And so we're still dealing with that legacy. And again, the regional plan set out specific policies for how you deal with existing development, as well as the new development that would be released through allocations and through the plan itself. The 87 plan metered out roughly 300 residential allocations a year. And in 2012, that was reduced to 130 units a year that we are currently metering out now. And we'll show this in a moment, but we're down to roughly about 6 years of remaining allocations that will be released annually. And then all of the residential allocations that are allowed under the regional plan will have been released to either TRPA or local jurisdiction pools to then be assigned to projects. So we're roughly about 6 years away from the culmination of that plan. Next slide, please. Now, when we talk about allocations from the regional plan and when we talk about our data, it's important to note that since the regional plan update in 2012, we have tracked every single allocation. And you can see here on the slide on the left, each residential allocation is individually numbered. And so we can assign that to a particular project or a particular parcel when there's a project associated with that. And we track every single transaction, including allocations, transfers, conversions, and all of this information then is rolled up into publicly accessible data on Lake Tahoe Info, so that we are showing the status of those development right pools and being able to report out on transfers and conversions. And we heard public comment, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But we are trying to make all this information publicly available so you can see how those development right changes are occurring. Next slide, please. When we look at total development capacity in the region, this is really starting to get into the meat of the data. Currently, there are just over 49,000 existing residential units that are located throughout the region. There are roughly about 400 units on the residential side that were previously existing, but have been removed, restored, and the units banked for future development. The 3,200 that we see here on the right-hand side, roughly about 6%, represents the remaining allocations that are allowed under the regional plan. This includes both residential allocations as well as bonus units that can be used for deed-restricted housing. They can be used for transfer and coverage retirement incentives as well. So that's really what we're talking about in terms of the universe of development. There's roughly about 7% remaining, and about 93% of what the regional plan would allow between existing and future development, about 93% is already existing today. Tourist accommodation units, again, roughly about 85% or just under 11,000 units are existing. And you see that 1,500 units that are banked. And just to spend a moment on that, that's really looking at the development around the South State Line, where the redevelopment project around Heavenly banked over 500 units in, I believe, around 2009, 2010, from the dated motels that were located in that area. Those units are still banked and sitting there awaiting future development, as well as units that have been reserved for development, like Homewood and Boulder Bay and or Waldorf Astoria. Some of the units that are reserved pending development are included in those banked units. But we see here also roughly 3% of the remaining allocations allowed under the regional plan for tourist accommodation units are available. On the commercial floor area, same thing. About 88% of our existing development is of the allowed development is existing. 4% is banked, and 7% is remaining in those pools. If we click to just once, so I just want to again reemphasize, as we look at these numbers, you can see here in this fortunately ugly green, the amount that was actually existing when the regional plan was adopted in 1987. And you see, again, the vast majority of what was going to be allowed through both the 87 plan and now the 2012 updates, the vast majority was already existing. In fact, for tourist accommodation units, we had more units existing before 1987 than we have today. Next slide, please. Now, again, when we talk about what the regional plan allows, these are those numbers, right? The regional plan allows certain additional residential allocations and residential bonus units for future development of residential units. It allows tourist bonus units, and it allows commercial floor area. And so roughly about 10,700 residential units would be allowed to be built under the regional plan, 400 tourist bonus units, and 1 million square feet of commercial floor area. This is on top of what was existing in 87. And you can see here, roughly 80% of the residential allocations have been assigned to projects, and vast majority of those have been built, about 78% of the total that was allowed. 60% of the bonus units have been assigned, but roughly only about 37% of those have been built. A lot of those that are reserved today are in various phases of development pipeline. And for the tourist bonus units, same thing. Only about 15% of those are built, and a lot of them are of the half that are reserved are pending that future development at Homewood, at Boulder Bay, or Walt, and some of those types of projects. Most of the commercial floor area that has been reserved is built, but again, it's roughly about half of what the regional plan allows has actually been assigned to projects. Next slide, please. As we review just the high level of sort of combining existing development, I wanted to just spend a little bit of time. And one of the takeaways that you'll see from this slide, when we look at the existing residential units over time, I think one of the key messages here is there is not much change. And we'll see this on commercial and tourist as well. But that bar slightly moves up a little bit each year, and that is the growth management system working the way it's intended. We release 130 allocations a year, and we're seeing roughly 100 units built each year. And we'll go through the details, but you can see there is a little bit of an uptick in the last 2 years, certainly. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But generally, when we talk about new development or development in general for residential units, allocations represent roughly 56%, residential allocations, roughly 56%, and bonus units are another 14% or so. So about 70% of what that bottom chart shows, the additional units that are being added, are coming from the regional plan allotments. The rest are moving around existing development. Again, development that was already on the ground and has been removed, banked in those units, those parcels restored, and that development is now being transferred or converted to other properties in the region. Next slide, please. This is the view of commercial floor area, and again, the overall story is really not much change. You can see fluctuation here and there, but generally over the last, since the regional plan over the last 13 years, we've had a net change of less than 2,000 square feet of commercial floor area. There's really not a whole lot of change occurring. And what you see is there are new developments. Certainly the Bijou Marketplace, the Whole Foods property in South Lake Tahoe came online, but that's offset by some large scale removals that we're seeing in some of these other properties. And Tahoe City Lodge converted some commercial floor area that was on site, and other properties that are removing development as well. And we are seeing some of that commercial floor area convert to residential units. And so again, that the net change is not significant. Next slide. Same thing on tourist accommodation units. What we're seeing here towards the tail end is the removal of units at Motel 6, at Lakeside Inn, and some of these other properties, Knights Inn, where the Bijou Marketplace was. And so net, we're actually seeing a reduction over the last 13 years of about 400 units. And again, those are banked, likely to be either converted or utilized in other ways. And again, that is the goal of the regional plan, is to really identify what is the development type that's needed. And when we started to allow conversions, first through pilot projects and now through the Development Rights Initiative from 2018, it was really designed to direct development where it's needed. So you can convert unused commercial floor area to residential units when you need residential units. And that's really the regional plan working the way that it's intended and the way that this board has directed. Next slide, please. So to go back to where we're seeing additional residential units, what we're seeing, the vast majority, again, is allocations from the regional plan for residential. That 100 units roughly a year that are being added. And traditionally residential allocations were the source for those new units. But what we're seeing, especially over the last 2 years, with the Sugar Pine Village in South Lake Tahoe, with the dorms at the Lake Tahoe Community College, a significant expansion of bonus units. And you can also see that earlier 48 units was the Aspens project in South Lake Tahoe as well. And so we definitely are seeing those opportunities. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of projects that are in the pipeline, but those projects do take time. And unless there's opportunities like the Sugar Pine Village, where there's a lot of outside push to get those projects done quickly. Those projects certainly have changed over the last 2 years the way that new units are coming online. And we hope to see that continue, but a lot of it depends on those outside sources. What we are also seeing is an increase, and you can see again, in 2018, we allowed conversions, and steadily we are seeing more and more projects take advantage of that. But those projects, both transfers, conversions, and the use of banked units, are really representing roughly about 30% of the units that are developed over the last 13 years. And the banked units are primarily a lot of those units are units that are properties, houses that burned down in the Angora fire, that are being rebuilt from those units that were banked after the fire. So a lot of those units were those rebuilds. Next slide, please. Just to talk a little bit about sort of the geographic distribution for this is 2025. So where are these residential units located? And again, you can see they're dispersed throughout the region. But what we are seeing over the last 13 years, from the 2012 regional plan update to today, about 80% of the new units that have been constructed have been on the South Shore, and about 83% are in the California side. So we are seeing, particularly in Washoe County, just limitations on vacant lots and just not as much development for new units there. And in Placer County, similarly, I think part of what we're seeing is in starting last December, we started to lower the IPES line in Placer County that will allow more of those units to develop and those vacant parcels to develop. I think that has held back some of the growth in Placer County, as well as just overall market conditions and other factors. And so, but you can see here the geographic distribution of our residential units. Next slide, please. So I want to just address it again. We heard through public comment again today, but this idea that conversions are additive to these development caps, and we want to be clear that in order to convert a residential unit, what you're first doing is, or in this case, a tourist accommodation unit. What you're doing is you're removing that existing unit. You're restoring the land where that sits in order to then be able to convert that to a different use and use it either on site or somewhere else. And so in this case, you see that the tourist accommodation unit would drop by one at the regional scale, and the residential unit would go up by one when that unit is built. And so in order to convert from one to the other, you're really taking something from one pool of development and converting it to another pool of development. And that is going to change the regional totals. If you're transferring a unit, let's say you're taking a residential unit from one parcel and moving it to another parcel, that does not change the number of units built, the number of total units that you would have. But transfers do benefit us because, again, it's an opportunity to take aging development that may not have BMPs. It's an opportunity to take sensitive development that may be in a sensitive area or in a wetland and move that to a more appropriate location on a high capability parcel, to move it closer to our town centers where we have more services. And so really that is, again, the regional plan and the transfer program doing what it's intended to do, which is locate development in more appropriate areas and move it out of our wetlands, out of our remote areas and into our town centers. Next slide, please. So just to close out, a lot of this data, and again, we heard from public comment, a desire for more of this information to be public, and we've heard that. And we've been working very hard to develop some dashboards and more information that takes what has been publicly available in Lake Tahoe Info, but makes it a little more accessible and a little more easy to read. So we have actually published yesterday these 4 development snapshots, and we'll continue to add more dashboards as well. But all of this information that we've gone through, you can click through each of these dashboards and really drill into the data and see, well, how many residential units are remaining in, Placer County or El Dorado County? How many is TRPA holding? What is left in terms of the regional plan allocations? And how is that changing? All of this information is real time and is driven off of the tracking in Lake Tahoe Info. So as soon as we receive an application for a new project and we reserve units, it will be deducted from those totals, and we'll be able to see that real time in these dashboards. So we're really pleased to be able to present these and hope that they're useful for that tracking. And we look forward to publishing even more dashboards. We heard Ann's comment about looking at conversions and transfers, and we have information available. And in fact, in the backup slides in my presentation, there are some ledgers similar to what she asked for, but we will be putting up those dashboards as well shortly. So we're welcome additional feedback and look forward to presenting more of this information going forward.